Now, the Conservative Party marked two milestones, one more momentous than the other this week. Rishi Sunak has today officially survived 100 days in office, while on Tuesday, Britain celebrated Brexit Day and 3 years of independence from the EU. But a bombshell new poll suggests there won't be much reason for celebration inside number 10 tonight. According to Times research, 72% of Brits don't think Sunak will survive past the next election. So, is there any way the Tories can turn their luck around and win in 2024? Well, joining me now is former Brexit Secretary David Davis. David, great to have you. Look, you didn't support Sunak initially. You backed Penny Mordaunt, but then once she was out, you very quickly believed that Sunak was the man to lead the country. I have my doubts. What am I getting wrong? What am I not seeing? Because I'm just finding it really hard to see how he wins. And I think he needs to win. You know, the Tories need to win for the good of the country to stop this coalition from hell, Starmer, Sturgeon and the like. But you know, he's not making any headway, David.
Well, you're trying to read a compass in the middle of a hurricane. That's what's going on at the moment. You've got the strikes, of course. You've got the economic problems. You've got just had the Sahawi issue, the scandal, whatever you call it. You've still got the Channel boats. You've got the economics. You've got the National Health Service issues. All of these are inherited issues. They've come to a peak now together, but they're all basically things he's got from his predecessors. I mean, the economic issues made worse by Truss. You've got many of the other issues, direct inheritance from Boris. So I'm not surprised that people are losing faith's the wrong word. They just can't see a way through it, I think, is what's happening. And, the question is one you should perhaps ask me in about three or 6 months' time, because then we'll either be through the strikes or we won't. Then inflation... He says he's going to halve inflation. Well, we'll know by then whether he succeeded at that. We'll see how the budget delivers. We'll see what happens with National Health Service. He's got lots and lots of plans. I mean, he announced, Monday was a classic case in point. He announced a whole series of programs for new ambulances and mental health actions and so on. Nobody can remember a word of that because all of the other noise. That's what I mean by trying to read a compass in a hurricane.
Yes, but he's also said he's going to stop the boats, David, and I struggle to see how he can do that without leaving the ECHR. We know that's what the Home Secretary thinks needs to happen, but Sunak isn't even contemplating doing that. No,
and the Home Secretary, to be blunt with you, hasn't exactly improved the situation. I mean, the hard truth is, other countries in Europe have actually dealt with this better than we have. I mean, the classic case is Sweden. Now, Sweden is a sort of social democratic, held up as the most civilized state in the world and so on. You know what they did 2 years ago? They passed a law saying, if you come from a safe country, you're going to be turned around the border. You're not going to sit in an asylum centre or in a hostel or whatever. You're going to be sent straight home. And they did that under the ECHR and under ECJ, which is even tougher than the ECHR. They wrote the laws to deal with it. Why can't we do that? I mean, that's what needs to happen. I mean, I led a group of 50 MPs making that point to Sunak before Christmas. That's what needs to happen. So that won't solve the whole issue. But you know what? I think the British public might have a slightly different view if we basically stop 15,000. I mean, that's not a bad start. The big time, So you got that. On the health service, once the strikes are stabilised, we've got to get the waiting times down. Now, all right, this is an inheritance largely from COVID. There are other reasons too, but that's a largely inheritance from COVID. He's got plans for that. He's one of the reasons I supported him bluntly was because he's very smart. He's a technocrat. He's not my sort of politician. I'm an ideological politician. I believe in ideals, But he's a technocrat. He's very smart to deal with those things. So you got that. On the budget, you see, I supported them at the end of last year. I'm a low-tax Tory. But, you know, the mess that was made of the economy by Truss and Kwarteng meant we had to stabilise it.
But have they not been vindicated by the IMF report this week?
Not remotely. Not remotely. Look, one of the things that would have happened if we continued, according to Patrick Minford, you know, a very good economist who was actually advising Truss,
very pro-Truss,
is that great man, is that the interest rates would have gone to not to 4%, which is giving people grief today, but to 7%, which would have meant you'd be having mortgage rates at 10%. So he's had to find his way through. He's inherited all these difficult problems, and he's got to find his way through them.
Okay. Okay, but on the issue of political communication, though, he's having troubles. And Lord Lister this morning on LBC, and he's a Boris ally, made it very clear. He agreed with you, you know, Rishi is a technocrat, but he just doesn't think, it was very clear, he just doesn't think that Sunak can win a general election when he can't communicate the policies. Now, David, I know that you are staunchly opposed to the idea of a Boris Johnson return, but surely you can see why it's becoming more attractive.
Well, I can see why his own supporters think that. Look, the truth of the matter is that Boris has got 2 months of witness appearances to take place in front of the Privileges Committee. You know, that's not going to help his reputation. He's created dozens of these problems himself. You know, he's got real flaws as a Prime Minister. But even put Boris aside, I'll be frank, if the Tory party seeks to elect somebody else now, between now and general election, if we elected the Messiah himself, if Jesus Christ came and led us, we'd still lose, you know, because we've got to make up our mind and stick by it. And that's what I'm arguing we should do. And if we do that, then Sunak, there's no guarantee. I think the odds are against us. You know, it's probably 3 or 4, even 5 to 1 against us. But if Sunak delivers on, let's say, stopping the Albanians, 15,000. If he delivers on some improvement in health service, it won't fix it, and that's going to take longer than 2 years. If he delivers on getting some growth back, and remember, one of the things that always makes me laugh about the BBC is they treat forecasts like facts.
I know.
You know, it doesn't matter whether it's a COVID forecast or an economic forecast.
Well, they're economically illiterate. Their own report revealed that this week. Their own BBC report revealed they do not know how to report economics, and they're trying to do the country down at the moment. But look, David, I just want to move on because there was this really disturbing report this week where the government admitted, really shockingly, in my view, that the British Army's Information Warfare Unit was monitoring COVID lockdown critics. And you have revealed that you were actually one of the victims of this worrying case of what I believe is government overreach. So how do you feel about being surveilled by the army simply because you spoke out against cruel lockdown policies?
It wasn't just that unit. It wasn't just that unit. I mean, that unit was made a big deal of by the Mail on Sunday, understandably. In fact, in some ways, it's the least problematic. Almost every major department of state, the Home Office, the Foreign Office, DCMS, the Cabinet Office, have all got their own surveillance operations. Now, they were put in place for various reasons. Some were put in place to deal with Russian interference in our democracy. Very sensible. Some were put in place to deal with extremists. Very sensible. But what's happened is they've all been reapplied to prop up the government propaganda on COVID. You know? And what's happened as a result of that is not just me. I mean, there's several other MPs too, but also that we know about. Bear in mind, we had to ask I had to ask on my own behalf to find out. But several other MPs, major journalists, Julia Hartley-Brewer, Peter Hitchens, you know, all being surveilled. Yeah. And you know,
Adam Brooks, who's one of the panelists on our show. You know, he was a pub landlord being surveilled by the government. I mean, it's appalling.
But the thing is, I mean, look, the truth is, you know, none of this is, they didn't bug my home. They just looked at what I said in public. But why were they doing it? Presumably, there's an outcome of this. And the question I asked in the House of Commons today of the Cabinet Office was, Peter Hitchens, after in 2020 he was being monitored, suddenly found himself sort of shadow banned. You know, a word I'd not come across before this week. You know, he appeared on interviews and so on, and all of a sudden, nobody was looking at the interviews. You know, maybe the search engines had changed, or the platforms had changed, or whatever. So, did the government go to the platforms and say, deal with this? And
we need to know.
We haven't got an answer yet.
We need to know.
If they did, that's a disgraceful, massively anti-democratic thing. It's a sort of Soviet thing to do. So it's really serious.